Hello and welcome to the Gratitude and Growth Podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Mittich. I am an actor, a yoga instructor, a former ballet dancer, but above all, I am a wildly curious person. So I've spent the past several years researching and studying human behavior, why we do what we do, who and what we innately are, what my purpose is on this planet. And I'm here to share the insights and the tools that curiosity has led me to uncover, in hopes of helping you to navigate the inevitable ups and downs of your own life, and in hopes of inspiring you to become the person that you have always wanted to be. So pull up a chair or go for a walk, hop on that treadmill or go for a drive, and join me as I explore what it is to be a human being in this lifetime. Hello, and welcome back to another episode. I have a guest with me today who is hands down one of the kindest people I have ever met. She has this energy about her that always inspires me to be even more kind and patient and loving with the people around me and people that I don't even know. She is an incredibly talented actress and a wonderful human being. Please let me introduce the lovely Sarah Fisher. Hi, Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
Of course. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Honestly, I'm so happy to be here. You know, I love you so much. I'm so proud of you. And I think what you're doing is really incredible. It's very refreshing to hear, just to hear such honest words and truths come from someone. It's really a beautiful, hard thing to do. So I'm very proud of you.
Thank you so much. Truly. My goodness, where to dive in? But I will dive in with something that I've always been curious about you. And that is, look, and before I dive into this, I do want to preface it with, I understand you have hard days, off days. You are a human being. So I don't want this to seem like, because I think perfectionism is such a big thing, especially in our industry, especially as women, that I don't want it to like lace in some kind of perfectionism that you're always on and kind. And I'm sure you have days where you snap, and I'm sure you have days where the challenges get to you. And we'll definitely talk about that. But I do want to ask you, you do have an innate kindness to you that I've witnessed for the many years that we've known each other. Are you aware that you do? Is that a mindset choice?
You know, that's a very good question because I think I'm still trying to figure it out. And what I mean by that is I think it's a lot of things. I think one of the first things that it makes me think about is my parents. I am very lucky to one, I realize I'm very lucky. I have two incredible parents who I'm really close with. I am equally best friends with my mom and my dad, and they are best friends with each other. And my siblings I'm very close with. I feel like I've grown up very close with my family, and my again, my parents have just, I think, been a really big part of molding who I am. And they were, that's one of the first things that popped up in my head was them. But I think, I mean, know this, till I was 6, I was horrendous. Like most parents look down to find their children. They looked up because I jumped and climbed on everything possible. Like I just didn't, like, it's funny because you're like, you're human. And I'm like, was I? Like, I don't know what I was thinking. I was all over the map as a kid. And my parents said one day when you were 7, everything turned. You went from being the kid when you bring them over to someone's house, they're like, Sarah's coming, hide your things, like that kid, to I'd answer the phone and go, hello, this is Sarah Fisher speaking. May I help you? And everything turned. Everyone was like, what happened to her? Like, and the funny thing is, none of us really know, but there was such a major shift when I turned 7. And ever since then, I've lived more in the world, I guess, of choosing kindness as much as I can and all these things. But it's interesting because I think a piece of it is very much just I'm very lucky to wake up in the morning and to be, my health. And I think it's just a part of who I am. I like to see the good and I look for the good as much as I can. And the good inspires me. And it could be so simple. Someone doing something nice for someone on the street. I see a butterfly, and I'll try and stop and notice things and I really take them in. But I very much so have those days where all the good things are just not good. Like you wake up and it's like everything that you thought was good yesterday is not good today. And I like to share those things because I often do get told these kind of things, which I really appreciate. I know it comes from such a nice place. And I know it doesn't mean I don't have bad days, but I do get told a lot. How are you always so happy? A lot of people will say you never have a bad day. That is just, I can promise you I do. But I wonder sometimes also if on potentially on days where I don't always feel good, where I potentially feel this pressure to, because I know people see me that way. And I feel like there may be not an expectation, because it is something very genuine with me that I do feel a lot of the time. I feel sometimes a bit of that. Maybe it's a responsibility. I'm trying to figure out what the word is still. I don't quite know, but where I feel the need to be that for everyone as much as I can, because I think people expect it of me. And I'm still trying to figure out why I maybe feel like that, whether I feel like it's a responsibility or whether I feel like whatever that is, I'm still trying to figure that out. And I'm very lucky that most of the time it is of course genuine and I feel that way. But I definitely have moments where I'm just like, oh, I don't feel good today, and that's okay. And I really appreciate your truth, because I was listening to one of, I believe, if not your first podcast, but one of your first podcasts. And you spoke about this, and it really inspires others to open up. So I really appreciate that from you, because I feel like you and I are very similar in some ways. I very much feel that sense of people pleaser. And I always make the joke of, I don't know why my therapist keeps bringing up this term, but she keeps talking about people pleasing. And I really feel like that's a part of it. And I'm trying to figure that out still. But I love that you spoke so honestly about it, because it's very relatable to me. Trying to dissect it and be like, why do I feel like it's not okay to just feel how you're feeling. And if you're not feeling like up and bubbly that day, don't be up and that's okay. So
Yeah.
that's sort of something I'm still figuring it out. Just, yeah, still trying to navigate.
Yeah, no, the people pleaser thing is huge. Yes, and I feel you and I are very similar. And I used to have people actually question my authenticity when I am operating from that really loving place, from that happy place. And I've had people be like, "Is that real? Like, is that actually real, or are you like putting something on?" And I wanted to ask you if you've ever had to deal with people asking you that. And it's such an interesting question because for me, I do tend to overthink sometimes. And so I'd be like, is it real? Is it real? Am I putting something on? Which part of me is real? And then I realized all of me is real because I am a living, breathing human being. And a living, breathing human being experiences all the emotions. They experience each end of the spectrum. Some nights here with my boyfriend, I'll get so hyper before bed that I'm literally jumping around like a little kid. And then the next morning, I'm in a deep, grounded, seated meditation Zen master. And I'm like, I am all of it, you know? But have you ever had that where people question your authenticity with it?
Yes, I have. And it's funny because I couldn't agree more. I come from this place where I'm like, but no, like it is. Like, I don't know. I don't know what to and you're right. And it's something that I've had to learn, because I've had moments where I do stop and pause and go, what is real? What isn't real? And you couldn't be more right that the answer is, even when I'm in those pockets where I'm trying to figure out who I am, I'm overthinking every word that comes out of my mouth. I'm trying to be funny. I'm trying to be connected. I'm trying to be honest. But then I'm thinking so hard about all these things that I'm not really being any of them. And even in that pocket, I've learned more recently to go, that is also Sarah, and that is also okay. And as we spoke about a bit earlier, but my boyfriend has been really wonderful and helpful with that where if I'm having a bad day or if I'm feeling sad, he's like, "No, this is also a part of you and that is beautiful and that is okay." And I think the more you get exposed to people in your life who make that feel safe, the more you allow yourself to do it. And I think I'm lucky that I have such great family and friends as well in my life that I think the pressure to not be that way has come from myself more than anyone
Yes.
else. And that's a very interesting thing. And to answer your question, I have had someone, a great actor who I won't name, but so wonderful. We had a blast on set together. And it's funny, we have a mutual friend, and she went to my friend and she said, we got to a place where we were really like, I've got a ridiculous sense of humor, and her and I just had a blast together. But she went to them and she went, "Oh, I started set being like, that can't be real. She can't be real. That can't be real. There's no way she's that positive and happy or that lightness. Like that's not a thing. That's not her. It couldn't be." And she said, "But as time went on and we filmed every day, all day together, that's who she is. Like that is who she is." And he's like, "Oh yeah, that is her. That is her." And she was like, "Oh," like, "Okay." And we had so many laughs together, like, we had such a blast, but she just it's interesting, it is something that comes up where people do feel like it isn't a real thing. And what I've gotta be open and honest about is sometimes I do put that on, as I've said, where I don't always feel happy, and I'm trying to be what I know people want me to be and what they do expect because it is a genuine part of who I am. And I think that's been something that I've learned so much about. And yeah, again, just what you're saying, allowing yourself to be all of it because I get the exact same thing. I could be jumping up excited 1 second and the next I'm sitting down feeling like right now, feeling so beyond present with someone I care about. And I'm not jumping off walls and I'm not always doing that because, I will say though, that is what I always tell people when they go, "Oh, you don't drink coffee?" I'm like, I always go, "Could you take a moment to think about me on coffee?" And they take a moment and they go, "Yeah, no, that absolutely not. There's no way you should be a coffee drinker."
I didn't know that about you. I didn't know you didn't drink coffee.
I hate the taste. I drink Christmas in a cup. I drink chai lattes or matcha lattes. That's the move.
That's amazing. I love everything that you just said. Thank you so much for sharing that. And it's funny, you said something when you said sometimes you get really in your head and you're like, what am I supposed to say? How am I showing up? And I'm not being present in this moment. And I just want to take a side note because it reminded me of acting 101 is like when you're in your head and you're not present and isn't it's the same thing for life, right? I'm learning all these things that I even taught or teach students, clients, whatever, myself. I would always say things like, there's a gap between intellectual understanding and practical execution. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's life too, though. You can intellectually understand these things, you're working on yourself. But there's a gap between that and the actual practical execution of like, okay, today in this conversation with these people, I'm going to try not to prove myself and operate from that place of feeling unworthy. Because when I do that, I talk too much and I don't listen and I make the entire conversation about me, for example. But I find it so fascinating when you say that because I think life happens in the present moment. That's actually life. And I went through a big phase where I was like, well, I have to be present every moment of every day. I was like, okay, Zen Master Sarah, that's not doable in 2024. And maybe it is for some people, but I don't have aspirations to go and live in the woods with nothing around me and be present all the time. Some days I do. Sometimes I like run away for a weekend into nature and shut off the entire world. And I need that. Like my soul, my body needs that. Um, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it as well. Is I do, I have this need. I love to love. I love to love everything about life and everyone in life. When you say the thing about the butterfly, I so resonate with that. I will just sit in the backyard and watch birds come and go and watch butterflies come and go. And the magic of it lights me up like I'm a 5-year-old kid. And I'd always been like that. And in my 20s, I kind of got the feeling or idea from others around me that that's just too much. It's just too much for this world. And that's when people started questioning it. And so I started questioning it. And so I started getting a bit more, not necessarily fully negative, but I started getting very confused. Like my 20s for me, I was just like clunky. I was going from, like, this to that and trying to figure out different ways of how I wanted to be, and I had no idea, and I think 20s are like that for a lot of people. Like, I just think your 20s are kind of your time to figure out who you are, whereas 100 years ago, you did that when you were, like, a teenager, you know? But nowadays, you, like, use your 20s to figure out who you are. Then your 30s, you kinda start trying to live that person, and then I feel like maybe once I get to my 40s, everything will be solidified. Who knows? We'll see. But I don't know how you feel, but I love feeling like a little kid every day. I really do. To see all the wonder in the world, and the fact that you say that, the fact that you say you look for the love. I don't know if you know this, but that is, I read a lot of books and I do a lot of studying. I love to learn. And so I've read a lot of books on mindset specifically. And that is something that is trainable. And the fact that you are there, that you're already there naturally to do that, I think a lot of people don't realize when you train, when you rewire your brain to choose love instead of fear or positivity instead of negativity, since you're searching for more of the good stuff, you're going to find more of the good stuff.
100%. It's interesting. I love everything you're saying, and I have so many thoughts on this because I think that this has been such a theme in my life in so many different phases too. But with what you just said, it's so interesting. You totally took the words out of my mouth, which I love, which is I love the idea of the more you welcome abundance into your life, the more abundance is going to come in. Because you know what it's kind of like when my sister was pregnant. I promise this is going to make sense. When my sister was pregnant, everyone in the world was pregnant. I looked everywhere and I only saw pregnant women everywhere. Like it's that thing where when you really focus on something or something is very involved in your life, you really start to see it around you. And I think it's that idea where when you start to look for good, you notice more good. Because I can tell you when I'm having a bad day, I'm almost like, you know what? If we're feeling it, let's feel all of it. And I kind of go looking for all the things that could be bad, or I could manipulate to see the bad in, or whatever. Whatever it is, like sitting down and writing could be a really hard thing. Your brain's going, well, what if nothing happens with this? What am I doing it for? And the next day I'm like, this is gonna be amazing because I'm not gonna stop till I make it and I'm learning so much. Like it's incredible how one thing can have so many different feelings associated to it, depending on the lens you are looking at it in. But I feel it's interesting because I will say I do have a side of me growing up where I was a tad naive. I did. I may have still a part of me that I'll say is a bit naive. A lot of that came from, I think, that positive outlook of sort of what you were talking about, where people are like, well, that might be too much. That's not safe. And I was like, well, it's not that I don't see or know or are aware of the not good things. It's that I would like to choose to put more focus on, if I'm in a space where I'm able to, I would like to try and look more for the good. I know the bad's there. I could choose to look at the bad, but in this moment I want to look at this, or I want to pay attention to this. And I also realize I'm very lucky that to be able to, as yeah, I'm human, but so to be able to, as much as I can, try and see the good things. And I think a big part of that as well is I had a really close girlfriend of mine, Carly Allison, who I know you know so much about from Kiss and Cry, the movie that I associate produced, and I played Carly, and it was and will always be one of the most honorable moments in my acting career to play such an extraordinary woman. And I do talk about her all the time. My point being, I could go on and on, but I do think she's a really big part of who I am. And I think it's also recognizing that sometimes life can get very real. For people who don't know, listening to podcasts, who don't know the story, she was one in 3.5 billion people who had a very rare form of cancer. I know what I'm about to say is so cheesy, and she would say it, she would probably laugh with me at how cheesy it is, but she is 1 in 3.5 billion people for every reason other than cancer. But this girl had the brightest light going into every room she walked into before and during her journey. And watching and experiencing that was beyond incredible and just really, I think it really changed me. And so I feel like there's a lot of her in me as well. And I think we carry those experiences with us in our day to day, whether we're actively thinking about them. I think they sit somewhere in us. And that's a really big part of all of it as well.
How old were you when she passed?
I'm 2 years older and her car passed at 19. So I was 21.
Because I was going to touch on this story, uh, if you don't mind diving into it a little bit, because I thought what you did, turning her story into a movie, turning her story into a way for you to tell her story is so beautiful and inspiring. And I wanted to ask you, why? What drew you to do that? Because also it's such a feat, right? I mean, to make a movie is such a feat. Um, what inspired that?
Well, so how it all kind of happened at the beginning. I'm a really big believer in the universe making things happen that are meant to happen. And we don't have answers to that, but I just feel there is so much we don't have answers to that I can just trust that the universe, it has definitely proven to me, even in the last 3 years, which I'm sure you and I will continue to talk about, but the universe has time and time again proven to have my back, even if in moments where it's very, very hard or the hardest, it is always, it is always brought me somewhere where I go, oh, okay, I see. I'm thinking when I'm talking about this, I'm talking more about a different thing in my life, which I'm sure we'll get to. But with regards to the movie with Carly, I really feel like the universe just went, this is a story that needs to be told. And how it kind of happened is after Carr had passed away, I was in San Diego for a premiere for a movie, Full Out, that was on Netflix that I did. And the director, we had a great time working together. And he said, you know what, I've got nothing on my plate right now. If you're available, I'd love to work with you again. And I was just like, oh, an actor having the opportunity to say, like, yeah, I'd like to work. I'm gonna take it. So I was like, oh, of course. Yeah, like let's do it. He was great to work with. I was like, absolutely, let's do it. And the first thing I said, I sat down with my mom and I said, if I have an opportunity to tell a story, I want to find a story to tell. I want to tell a story that inspires people. And we looked at each other. My mom's like, we have to tell Carly's stories. I said, you're absolutely right. You're totally right. And I went to her family. I spoke with them to make sure that that was something they felt comfortable and safe with before we made any moves. And Cara was a superstar. She was born a superstar, that girl. She was a phenomenal singer and figure skater, athlete, all the things. Everything she did, she just flew. She was phenomenal at. So we all agreed that this was something she would have wanted and it was something we all wanted to be a part of. So I went to Sean Cisterna, the director, a good friend of mine, and I said, I'm going to give you an elevator pitch of the best story you're ever going to hear. I sat him down for 2 hours because let's be real, I like to talk. And I went on for over 2 hours about everything she said, like every detail. And I spoke a lot about her relationship with her boyfriend at the time, John Servinus, who's a lovely gentleman, like a wonderful person. And I went through their love story and her story and how she rose above everything. And within a year after that pitch, the movie was done. And it's a thing where all of Toronto, all of Canada, I feel really came together because the second I said Carly Allison, people went, oh my God, what can we do for you? And so much of the reason this movie was made is because of the person Carly chose to be and who she was. Always, before cancer, during her journey with cancer, people were in love with her and everyone bent over backwards and said, how can we help you? And honestly, that's how the movie got made. And the family were so involved. John was so involved. The producers involved, one of them got a huge tattoo to remind them of the movie. Like this was, and it's actually was really sweet. Someone on set, who I the makeup artist, Kat, who I was really close with, and still she's a wonderful person. She said it's the Little Big movie. And the cool thing is, we came in being like what you said, we're like, we're gonna try and do this, we're gonna try and make this movie. And we were so it was such a magical experience, and Carr just sprinkled her magic dust over everything. And we were on Netflix for 5 years worldwide. We went to film festivals around the world, winning awards in several different countries. We traveled. We it was just Yeah, it was just a really incredible journey, the whole experience. And a lot of her friends and family and John were in the movie as well. Like, just every moment was just it's one of those movies where we took the time to be emotional on set if we all needed to just hug each other for a moment. And it will always be one of the most special projects I ever do. So I say that the inspiration came from Carly. The movie happening and being made came from Carly. Um, I will say everyone involved were also just such a huge, important part of the experience. Everyone was just really just the best people. And, something that we centered our whole movie around was the motto that Carr had, which was always smile. And that is kind of the little, well, not little, very big cherry on top of everything, was making sure that that was the message that came through. That somehow, with such a rare diagnosis and rare situation to be at in such a young age, Carr made other people smile and smiled. And how beautiful is that?
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Honestly, I feel you exude always smile. Like I was saying, it's like you have this energy about you. And, I think an experience like that and being able to tell your best friend's story and dive in that way too. What a beautiful thing, I think. I don't want to make an assumption here, but I think for you as well in healing part of that, because I'm sure no matter how, again, no matter how much light there is in the situation, it's still not an easy one. Death is never quote unquote easy. Um, but did it help you kind of find even more closure with it?
Yeah, it did, because when we had gone to San Diego for this premiere, Carr, I believe, had passed away about 2 weeks prior to that premiere. Um, and so I still think I was really trying to it's hard, you're so right, because it's hard to find the right words when it comes to all of that. I don't know if the word is numb, processing, like, I don't know what it was. Maybe both, maybe all of it. And being an artist, before I was an actor, long before I was an actor, I was always a singer-songwriter. And the moment anything happened that really affected and impacted my life, I ran to a piano and I wrote and I sang about it. And acting now becoming an additional love of my life, like music, I kind of ran to the opportunity to dive into my art, because there is so much that can help from talking about it and from being around people you love. And there's so much help that comes from that. And there's this whole other world of help that you get from pouring it into art that I don't even know if I can explain what it is. I don't really know. It feels like magic to me, but there is something that you do get by pouring feelings into the thing that you're passionate about, whatever that is, whether it's sports, whether it's science, whether it's math, like, it doesn't matter what it is. But if you love something and you have passion there, and you can find it as this sort of channel, this thing that you can throw your energy into. Yeah, it was just, I kind of, the opportunity came up and I just sort of dove headfirst into it and didn't look back once. And it was incredibly therapeutic, because we relived so many beautiful moments in Carr's life. And I think it's also very therapeutic to sit in the moments that weren't as light and, bringing her story to life. We broke the fourth wall, and I speak to the camera, and, you watch her tell you that when she gets diagnosed and when she tells you the cancer had come back, she had beat cancer the first time. The one in 3.5 billion, she beat it and she was in remission for several months before it had returned in her lungs. And both of those moments you share with her through the camera. And in those moments, it was just really beautiful because on set we all would just cry together. We would all sit in it together. And there's something, having gone through other hard things in my life as well. I've realized the importance of sitting in the feelings. If you're feeling something, it's that thing where there really, and we hear it so much, we get what I'm about to say, that we get so desensitized to it, I think, but there really is no way around things most of the time. You kind of have to go through them. Like I remember telling an old, sorry, I'm not trying to get too off track, but just a quick side note. I just in that theme, um, seeing an old friend who was going through a really hard time. And I tried to make it very clear to him. I said, I want you to know that you are so much closer to the place emotionally where you want to be than you are right now. And I'm sure this time last year when we had coffee, when you were going potentially, I don't want to speak for them, but I think they agreed that it was something they wanted to walk around. They didn't really want to get into. And I said, but I want you to know, although you may feel more uneasy emotionally today than you did this time last year, you are so much closer. And you don't feel like it because you're in the weight of the heaviness of being in the pile of it, but you are so much closer because you're getting through. And similarly, I think with the experience with Kiss and Cry being very therapeutic, it was so beautiful to relive so many happy moments. And similarly, it was so hard. What I want to say, I don't know if I don't know the right word. It was so sensitive, or what I always struggle to find the right word. And I think part of it is because when you watch someone go through something like cancer, I think you feel a sense of, it might be guilt or it might be a different word, where you don't feel like you are allowed to say that things are hard, in the way of, when you watch someone go through something like that, it is just such, I don't have words to describe how powerful these people are who have gone through a journey of having any diagnosis that is so challenging. And I just don't have any, feel like I never have the right words when I talk about it. I still don't know the right word, how to talk about it. But I guess sitting in the moments that were sad was also equally very therapeutic in such a different way. I hope I'm saying that all right. I think really hard when I talk about all this because it is such a, and I think it's because unless you've gone through it, you don't and you can't understand it. So I'm always trying to find the right words. And usually what I end up saying in all the interviews I would do for the movie, so often I said, I don't have big enough words to describe the strength and bravery and power of anyone who has gone through anything in this world. And um yeah, I'm always really trying to navigate it. But to answer your question, it was, yeah, it was very, very therapeutic as well. Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow, you shared so many incredible points there that I just want to highlight a little bit because I think it's so incredible. First, I always say there's certain things in life where words are the least effective communicator because so many experiences like that or other profound experiences, whether it's a moment in nature that's so beautiful and awe-inspiring, or dealing with death, or watching somebody do this, or a spiritual experience, words sometimes can't fit, for me as well, words can't fit into what that is supposed to be, or not supposed to be, but into what that experience was. So I totally hear you on that, but everything you said was communicated very clearly, and I got it at least. So I'm sure everybody listening did as well. Um, so I'm a big, big, big believer of the only way out is through. And because for so many years I didn't. And I think everybody goes through it at some point where sitting in emotion is very uncomfortable. It's very uncomfortable to sit in pain, to sit in uncertainty, to sit in an experience where something's hitting you and you don't really know what it is. And sometimes you don't know if you're sad or angry or mad or all of it at the same time. And I don't know if it's a societal thing. I don't know if it's, especially if you surround yourself with people who don't make you feel safe. Earlier you said, you have a really great support system, your boyfriend, your friends that make you feel safe. I think that is so important because if you don't have a support system that makes that feel safe, it's already so unsafe. It feels so unsafe that to not have a community to be like, "Hey, I need to cry and scream today, and that's my truth." Even I'm still learning how to do this, especially in a relationship. My boyfriend is incredible and he is so patient, but this is my first relationship in a while and I'm a very new person and I've done a lot of work on myself. And then when you take that work into a relationship, relationships are your biggest mirror. And it's so fascinating to me what happens when you take a version of yourself, a new version of yourself out into the world, out into a relationship. And even when you were saying earlier in the episode that you sometimes think about like, what am I going to say here? And who am I going to be? And am I being who I want? And which version should I be? And as overwhelming as that is, I just want to commend you because I always think the awareness is key. The awareness is key of even when you're doing work on yourself, when you leave a hangout with your friends and you're like, damn it, I didn't show up how I quote unquote wanted to, or I've been working on this one part of me and I just dipped into all my old tendencies. It's like, okay, cool. But the fact that you left that hangout and then had that realization, that is a massive win for me. It can feel like torture for a while because you're like, oh, I keep not showing up. But then one day you do. And then another day you do. And then 6 months in, you're still doing it. And then it becomes a lifestyle change, right? So, yeah, I just want to commend you so much on that awareness because that is a huge win. And even having the awareness as you were filming that movie of allowing everybody to sit in it, like how beautiful and human, like what a human experience. And to be able to lace that into your craft and into what you love to do. I completely understand. And I think most artists understand when you say you don't really know what it is, but you turn your pain into your artistry. It's a method to get it out of you and into something that inspires or changes or is just for you.
Oh, yeah. 100%. I completely agree.
Okay, I want to switch gears here a tiny little bit. You brought it up a couple times. You've been through a really big change the past few years. You don't have to get into crazy details if you don't want to, but I remember we ran into each other in the hallway like a year
Yeah.
ago or a year and a half. And we always do this. It's like a quick 5 minutes. And we both, what I love about you, Sarah, is you and we don't really do small talk. We just dive in. Like we just
Yeah.
dive in, heart and soul. And we're like, everything happened with my life. And it's like, oh my gosh, this happened with my life. And then it's like, okay, I have a class. I got to go. Okay, bye.
It's quite the run-in because if mistaken me, tell me if I am not right in what I remember this being. We had gone through a similar, pretty explosive life change. And we basically just went, hey, this is me. And the other one was like, me too. Okay, love you. Bye. Like, and it's so funny because I we don't always get what for at least on my end, the luxury of having the time to see you all the time because we're just so busy. And it just we always get those quick run-ins where you've always had such a beautiful openness about you that I feel safe to be like, hey, here's everything big that's happened to me lately. And I say it in one sentence because I know you will take it, accept it, love it, and be happy for me, and we'll move on. Like that's how we function. And yeah, we had such it was quite the run in. It was epic. In fact, in our whole friendship, I just feel like that moment really shows kind of what our friendship looks like. It's like, hey, it's been a while. How are you doing? Give me the big stuff. I love it. You great. And then we do our thing. Um, yeah, but no, I had gone through a really big transitional moment in my life. I was in Toronto when we had bumped into each other. It was pretty recent, I think. I'd gotten out of an 8.5 year relationship. And I want to say that anything I speak about in regard to it at all and what I've learned and what I've, all the things is just my experience. And I know that sounds like that thing where people are like, you just feel like you need to say, but I always am going, you know what? We all have our reality that we live in and what we experienced and what happened on our side of things. And I won't get into details of what happened, but it it was very hard on me. It was a really difficult breakup. And I will say, because I do feel this way, I'm very proud of how I handled all that happened. I'm very proud of myself for what we're just talking about, for choosing to show up the way I wanted to, which was with grace, openness, forgiveness, and I think I could have shown up a lot of different ways. But I worked really hard on myself. I went into therapy very quickly, and we can get into this. I am a big therapy cheerleader. I think it is something what's the word? To celebrate. And it's interesting and it's funny because I get excited talking about therapy because I love it so much. And I think it's such an incredible tool. And I mean, it gets to a not okay place because I really just want to go hang out with my therapist because I feel like we're best friends. And that's probably where they have to draw the line. But I'm just like, hey, what are you doing Friday? Let's just like go out for drinks. She's great. She's wonderful. But um, I had gone through a really difficult breakup. And what I learned in that time, because it was a situation where it felt like it was like threefold. Like things kept happening where I was like, oh, that really hurt. Oh, this really hurt. Oh, that was extremely painful. And I had no choice but to sit in all of it and to accept how I felt in every moment I was feeling these things. So sometimes I'd be just really sad. Sometimes I'd be really, really angry. And I had to get to a place where I was like, you know what? If I'm sitting in my car and I need to scream and punch my steering wheel, I'm going to do it. And, maybe it's the actor in me coming out that's going, hey, I have gotten there in my work, whether it be on set or in classes. I need to go there right now. I need to allow myself to get to that place and know that the more I allow myself to feel how I'm feeling, the more I'm going to be able to let it go. And so every moment I felt something, I allowed myself to feel that thing. I didn't try to put a smile on top of it. I couldn't. So I just allowed myself to just experience it, whatever it was. And the interesting thing is, a quick side note, I mean, not really a side note, it has everything to do with this, but nature became my best friend. I love nature, but like you, I'm like, I don't need to go tent out. Like, I'm good. Like, I will do it for like maybe a weekend, maybe a week. Like, that's cool. That's fun. I went to camp. I loved it. But I've never felt more of a connection and a need for nature in my life. I couldn't, if I was inside, I felt like the walls were closing in on me. Because, for 8.5 years, that's a really long relationship. It was essentially a third of my life. And it's interesting. A relationship, it takes two people, for the good and the bad and all the things in between, it takes two people. And I will always say that regardless, because that is just true. Um, but I realized after that I'm trying to find the right words to say this, but it was a similar thing like you were talking about where you were like, I just felt like I grew so much that I became this whole other version of myself that maybe has always been lodged in there somewhere. But like you said, when you have people in your life where you don't feel necessarily safe to be your complete authentic self, you start to it's like you live your life through a filter. And you've got this filter of who other people want or need you to be for them. And the truth is, the right people in your life are going to allow you to be all of those things, and they're going to love you and care for you in all of it. And they're going to see you in all of it. The good days, the bad days, the happy, sad, mad, the irritated, whatever you're feeling, they will understand and love you and see you in all of them. But when you're in a relationship where, again, where maybe that doesn't feel safe, you don't feel safe to be all of those things, you start to shrink yourself. And I didn't realize this until after, that I was really shrinking myself to fit someone else's needs. And I had become such a small version of myself. And it took me a long time to realize this and to find the right words to talk about it, because I'm very passionate about all of this type of thing, because I've learned so much, and I've grown so much. But you know, it's interesting. It's sometimes you don't realize all of it until you find yourself turtling in experiences in your life with several different types of relationships, whether it be your partner, your friend, your someone you work with, whatever it is. You start, at least in my experience, when it comes to feeling like you had experienced a relationship where you felt the need to be smaller, a smaller version of yourself. Um, the stretch out is a long process, and it takes time to re-stretch yourself back out. And part of that for me has been recognizing that I deserve a seat at the table. And it's funny because in my professional life, I feel like I have a very kind, but a very strong voice to say what I need. I have no guilt, no hesitation. I say what I need when I need it. I say it nicely because I love everyone, and I love being on set. It's such a high for me. I love it so much. But I know what I want, I know what I need, and I will ask for it when I need it. But in my personal life, I started recognizing how hard it was. For a simple example, I found it really hard to ask friends to come to see me versus me go to them. And it would drive my parents crazy because they're like, "You're using a lot of gas money. You always go to your friends, and a lot of them live really far away, and you never even ask them to come to you." Why? Such a thing that you would think is such a simple ask was really hard for me. And so many different things in my life, I started to recognize the part of me that had shrunk, that really didn't feel safe asking for anything I needed, to the point where this is gonna sound next level, but it happened. So I love the environment you've created here is so safe. And I think the more you share, the more people might go, "Oh, I did that." And I was like, "What?" But anyway, so it's even to things where I had asked for a glass of water, but I had my hand on them as if I'm like, and I was realizing I was apologizing because I was almost like trying to calm them down. Like, "Do you mind passing the water beside you?" Here I am trying to calm someone, to try and not calm. I don't know if that's the right word, but I realized what I was doing is I was apologizing for the ask because I didn't want to ask. And it sounds silly, but I started recognizing and seeing so many different relationships and things in my life where I just didn't give myself a seat at the table. And I think that had become something I believed was safe for so long, because whether it be it made me feel like I was making them happy, or it kept things good, or the peace, whatever the right word is, I'm not sure. But it started to become it was so familiar that I think I started to convince myself it was safe. But now I look at it and I see how a relationship where I, again, didn't feel maybe that, you know what, I won't say maybe, a relationship where I didn't feel like every part of me was, I guess, whether it be encouraged or was safe to exist in the way that I needed it to be. I just really fell into a pattern, and recognizing that now, it has been 3 years since that whole moment in my life. And I'll catch myself in moments where I shrink and I don't give myself a voice or an opinion or an ask or a need. And there's things that I when I say them out loud, I'm like, these sound simple, but I have such a challenge with them. And and again, I have so many beautiful relationships in my life today. My boyfriend, my friends, my family, who've always just been so there and incredible. But I have so many relationships where now I'm allowing myself to ask for what I need so much more. and they show up and they're safe. And that makes me feel ongoing now that the more I'm exposed to that, the more I'm able to do it. And the more I'm giving myself a seat at the table because I deserve to have one. And I feel like I never used to understand it. And I'll touch on this for a moment because this might be something people relate to. I didn't understand for so long that I wasn't giving myself a seat at the table. And the reason is I think I have a lot of love for myself, and I feel very lucky to feel that way, but I feel I'm human. I go through all the thoughts, feelings, insecurities, all of it. But I do have a lot of love for myself, and I think I didn't understand. I said, "Well, if I feel that way," I kept being like, "Then why do I feel like I'm not showing up for myself, but I'm saying I love myself, but what's there's a disconnect here. I can because I can feel it. So why?" And I go, "Because I wasn't acting in a way that was loving myself. I loved myself, but my actions didn't correlate. It didn't connect because I wasn't giving myself a voice and a seat at the table, and that is not loving yourself completely." Because I would say, "No, but I love myself. So what am I missing? I don't really understand what happened. What's happening? I don't understand." And I finally got to a place where I went, "Oh, because the actions didn't connect with what I was saying. I do love myself, but if I love myself in the way I want to love myself and in the way where I love myself so completely, I would have given myself that seat." And again, that is just life and learning, and it's good. It's healthy, it's hard, it's important. And to kind of fast forward into where I am now, I had a seed of this feeling. I very much call this like a universal pull. Whatever the languages you want to use is fantastic. That's kind of how I connect with it. But I was very much just like, I kept feeling like I needed to move to LA. I had come here for pilot seasons for several years. It was familiar enough to me. I never thought I would ever live anywhere other than Toronto, ever. And I just felt like someone was telling me. I felt very much like the universe was going, "You need to do this and you need to do it soon." And within 2 months, I packed my bags and I moved to LA. I haven't looked back. And in a few months, I'm coming up to living here for 2 years. I'm living in I'm gonna say a 450, 500 square foot apartment that I adore. I am in a healthy, very happy relationship. I've built some amazing friendships here, and I've truly never been happier. And I continue to do therapy often, and it's so helpful to recreate new habits that are healthy in my life all around because it takes a lot of time to change a habit. Because first, it's the acceptance and the learning of it and the understanding of it and where it's come from. And that can take so long. But I honestly encourage and am sending just so much love to everyone because we're all in the journey. We're all in it. It's life. Like we're all in it. And it is all the things. But I can promise that through the hard times, there is such a beautiful world on the other side of it. And it may really surprise you what version of yourself you become. But I promise, trust that the hardest days are going to get you to the brightest on the other side. And again, I think it's something we hear so often that it can become something we almost don't believe anymore because we hear it so much. Follow your dreams. We hear it a lot. So we don't think that much about it. But I do really want um, people to know that if they're sitting in something hard, I promise you there is a beautiful other side to all of it, and that you are doing the hard work by sitting in that, by feeling it, by allowing yourself to feel how you feel and being honest with yourself about it. I applaud you. It is so hard, but I promise you are getting every day, every minute, you are getting closer to being in that place you want to be.
That was no, thank you so much for being so open and authentic and vulnerable. I think it's these kinds of conversations. I know for me, they're so inspiring to hear because we relate to so much of it. I mean, I know I do because we kind of went through a similar thing.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
you worded it so well of not giving yourself a seat at the table. And I've been there. And for me, therapy was so key. Nowadays, I'm working with a great life coach. And in a similar way, and I think it's so important to have some kind of professional sounding board space that isn't your friends and that isn't your family, somebody who is invested but objective, who has tools to offer you. And I just got to say, everything you're talking about too is what I also call the work of life, right? Of not only that awareness, but then taking those steps. Because, yeah, if anyone listening to this is in the shit of it right now, is in that darkness, I too promise you that there's such an incredible light at the end of it. But the thing is, sometimes it requires work. It requires you to be like, I'm feeling this. And yes, feeling all of it, but then being like, shit, it's because I'm not giving myself a seat at the table. And then knowing that, and then doing the what I call actionables to actually get yourself out of there and to make a difference is huge. I mean, but that is the work of your life. Otherwise, you either get stuck in that place of unworthiness. That's what it was for me. For so long is this feeling of I'm not worthy to have that, or I'm not worthy. And for me too, it wasn't necessarily career stuff. It was always in my personal life. I'm not worthy of insert here, XYZ. But I wanted to ask you, you know, my coach said something to me once that was so profound. She said, you are conditioned in relationship. So the only way to heal is in relationship. And what she meant by that was you are conditioned to feel a certain way by, let's say, an ex. You're conditioned, whether it's to feel small, whether it's to feel unworthy, whether it's just to not feel safe. And the only way to actually heal that is in relationship again. And what I mean by that is, I'll just get personal here for a sec. I'd done all this work on myself, by myself for a while, and then I got into a relationship. And then suddenly, exactly what you said, things were coming out of my mouth or I was doing certain things. And I'm like, woo, I thought I worked on this shit. Like, I'm right.
Yep.
I'm like, hey, oh no, I'm operating back to making myself feel small. Or I'm saying things that quote unquote old Sarah would say, but that's not my belief system anymore. I'm just saying them because I think that's what people want to hear or what my partner wants to hear, but that's not actually me. And then the inner dialogue was like, what are you doing? It was so hard. I felt so discombobulated because I was like, I'm not being authentic me. I'm being old Sarah, how she used to act in a relationship, which isn't Sarah now. And it took me time and it still is. Like, it still very much is because similar to you, I was in a relationship for 10 years, right? So you learn certain things and to break away from them. It's one thing to intellectually break away from them on your own. It's another to actually physically do the actionables to break away from it
Yes.
in a new relationship.
Oh yeah. 100%. And I feel like, again, I like, yeah, everything you're saying is so incredibly true. And I feel very similar where I'd be like, oh, I can break it down for the most part. Like I can break a lot of these things down and dissect it for myself and see where it's coming from and take responsibility for if I felt like I wasn't showing up for myself, well, how could I have shown up for myself differently in that moment or whatever it is? And I'll say again, because this has been probably one of the biggest takeaways for me is is I mean, you is continuing to do the self work to understand. I think that's really important when you find a partner who accepts and cares for all the different parts of you, sides of you, ways you're feeling, all of it, who sees it and continues to show you that it is safe and it is okay and that they are here. The more you are exposed to that, to a healthy, happy relationship, that what's the right word? I'm thinking continuity, and then I'm like, you're not on set, Sarah. That's not the right word. But that over and over, continuing to be exposed to those moments where whether the right word is you break or you're having a bad day and your brain goes, don't have a bad day or whatever it is. When your past creeps up on you and that inner voice creeps up on you, having someone tell you, I see you and I care about you and I am here for all of it. And that is, it's because you're right. It's the action, it's the doing, and the more you're exposed to how safe it is when you find someone who is there for you in that way, oh my gosh, everything changes. It becomes safe, and you start to trust that it is safe, that something that maybe hadn't felt safe to you in the past is safe here, and that opens you up like a flower, and it is a beautiful thing in a healthy relationship and in a happy relationship. And yeah, ups and downs are going to happen with everyone in your life always and all. Like that's not, that's not what I'm getting at. But what I'm getting at is the people who stick with you and stay by you and see you through every different color of emotion that you will feel in your life, and the only thing they will do is sit with you in them and hold your hand. Those are the people you keep in your life.
Yeah. And exactly what you're saying to me, even the work on yourself, I don't know if it's because I was a dancer for so long, but I always equate it to muscle memory. So the more you do these things, the more people around you make you feel safe and you actually do them and you ask for those things, or you're brave enough to show up in a way that you weren't before. The more you actually do them, the stronger you build that muscle, the stronger you build that part of you that's like, okay, I'm not afraid to do this now. But yes, it's the actual experience, actionable, of doing it time and time again. The continued showing up in that way, eventually it becomes a habit. Then that habit becomes a personality trait. Then that personality trait becomes a lifestyle. But it takes time, right? We live in a world where we just, we're fed instant gratification. So you think that you can just like fix yourself, quote unquote, overnight, but it takes time. And that time is different for everyone, but it just showing up. It's showing up again for yourself and again for yourself. And even showing up on the days that you don't want to show up, in whatever way you can that day, which might not be the same way as the days where you feel like you're flying high, right?
I love something you said when you spoke about the actuables. Actuables, am I saying it right? Is that it?
Actionables.
Actionables. Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, the actionables. What I like about that is I had spoken about this with my therapist where I said, I don't want to just be here telling you I understand these things, but then not activating them because it is so much. And actually, well, let me say, I was gonna say it's so much easier. I think it potentially is easier than the action. Maybe for some, maybe not for others, but because an additional hard thing is accepting something, is accepting that this is a habit of yours. Like that is very hard as well. Trust me. But getting to the place I started telling my therapist, I was like, I need to actually do them because I can keep talking about it and I get passionate and excited about the idea of the change. But the change comes from when my mouth goes, hey, I need a glass of water. That's when my change comes. My change comes from actually activating what I finally have gotten to a place. Not finally, I mean, it takes time, but I just mean I get to that place where I'm like, I understand it. It's a huge step that I've got to a place where I see the thing. I know what I want to tackle. I understand it. But now I have to go do it and live it and be it. And until I do that, then I'm not going to feel the kind of change I really want to feel here. And when I started doing that, yeah, like I was like, that's where I started to feel the empowerment come in. And even if it's in a question at a time or a need at a time or a ask at a time, each one got me again, started to build into that whatever you want to call it, but into the thing that will become that lifestyle that just becomes a part of who you are, that you just needed to maybe wake up. Maybe that's all it was. Maybe it was always there, but you weren't living the person you knew you know you are. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't mean that they weren't there. I think often they are, but we need to wake them up because they've been silent for a long time or because they haven't been seen or loved or given a seat for such a long time. But now you're giving them the opportunity and you're like, okay, I'm available. I'm here. And like, it's time to wake up.
I love that. Thank you. Okay. I'm going to wrap it up with two more questions for you.
Okay.
So, this is something I'm doing. at the end of every single episode this season. Given the title of the show is called Gratitude and Growth, would you be willing to share something you're grateful for right now and something you're growing through right now?
Okay, the grateful for, I know this is going to sound cheesy. It's going to sound like, whatever it sounds like, but I will say I am grateful for all of the very special, important people I have in my life, because everything else, all the tangible things, all, like everything else around it, there can be greatness there too. There can be important, special things there too. But to me, it is the important, special people in my life who I love and who I care so much about. I am extremely grateful because I am surrounded by the most beautiful, inside and out, just such amazing, beautiful, remarkable, extraordinary, kind humans. And I adore everyone I have in my life right now. So beyond, like, I know, again, no great enough words for how happy I am to have the people I have in my life. So that is the gratitude. And for the growth, I think a big part of the growth is honestly the part where I'm wanting to activate. So I feel like I spent a lot of last year trying to understand and trying to dissect and figure things out. Like, why do I do that? Why do I feel this pressure to do this? Why do I put this on myself to feel like I have this responsibility? Like, I was really kind of trying to look at everything. And I feel like coming into this year and a bit of last year, the growth aspect for me right now is really about the physical growth, which is actually going out into the world and doing the things that I talk so much about, the things that we're talking about, the things I talk about with my therapist, the things I talk about with my friends, with whoever. And now it's about going, okay, how can I activate it? How can I get into like ready, set, go mode? Like now let's in day to day. Doesn't matter how big and small. And this is something I wanted to say when we spoke about growth for everyone listening. Whatever those little wins are for you, little wins are huge. Again, like I have set an example where I was hesitant to ask for a glass of water. Like it doesn't matter. No one else has to understand why the things that are hard for you are hard for you. No one else needs to understand that. You know where it comes from. Trust in that and know that when you finally go, hey, can you pass me that? Can you pass me a glass of water? Whatever that is for you, whatever the glass of water is for you, that is okay. And that is a huge win, asking for that need. Or again, or whatever that looks like, doing this, asking for that, saying this, activating that, whatever it is in your world. I don't really think a little win exists, because little wins, as we've talked about, quote unquote little wins, because I don't really believe in a little win, but they become habits, and that's huge. That is how you live your life day to day, and that is huge. So in those moments where you recognize a win, celebrate it. Always celebrate it, recognize it, sit in how good it is. Go get yourself a chai latte or a matcha latte.
Sarah, I love you so much.
I love you so much. And honestly, thank you so much for having me. I'm so proud of you. You've created such an open, you've always been this person, which is why we word vomit all of our life within 2 seconds to each other. But you have created such a beautiful, healthy, open space where people feel safe to really talk about things. And I'm so excited for all that's to come in this journey for you, because honestly, it's so refreshing and nice. And it feels so good to just be open and honest. And you have just created such a beautiful space where that can happen and exist here. And you're sharing it with the world. And I think that is the most beautiful thing. And it is such a gift that needs to be shared from you to the world. So thank you so much. And I don't know, let's have this call once a week.
I know, right? This will be our new therapy. Thank you so much, everyone, for listening today. As always, stay grateful and keep growing. I'll chat with you next week. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you liked what you heard, hit that subscribe button and maybe send it to someone who you think might need to hear today's message. And let me know how everything's sitting. Leave me a rating and a review and let me know what's resonating with you. What do you want to hear more of? What's your favorite episode and why? And I hope you find your way back here to another episode, another time, as we keep exploring this beautiful and wild thing that we all call life.